Morning. So, to continue our video, we're going to go get some cables and things today so we can actually replace and move the batteries. We're going to move the batteries from the back into the console to get the weight distribution a bit better, as we discussed before. I think the first thing is we've made a list of things that we need. So let's go do some shopping, let's go get the cables and things we need, and then we can take it from there. So we're back. We've gotten some cables and positive negative cables. I got 6 meters of each. I know it's way too much, but don't know if I'm going to need more. So we need to replace the cables going all the way from the motor down into the back, through the pipe work into the console directly, because they were first only into the back. And so seeing that we're moving the batteries and everything forward, we'll need to replace those. The other thing that we've got is a new master switch. There is one already in the boat that only used to cut off only the power to the console. Now, however, I want to put in a second one so we can cut off power not only to the console but also to the motor. So we'll put in the second one of that to arrange that one. For the rest, let's get going and see how the day goes. So I think what's going to work best is if we start from the back and then we'll move forward from there. So yes, this is an old motor, and that's fine, it still works. So that'll be fine. So we need to get the motor, the piping and everything through this tube, which then goes into the back of the boat and then down under, and then we'll go to the front. The console's pretty much behind where you guys are, so we are going to now I'll try attempt because this is never an easy task to get this through there. However, it might just be to my advantage to try pull this tube out and then see if I can pull it further forward, or at least back into the boat. How far does that go? Maybe, oh, there we've got quite a bit of distance now. Maybe if I tape these two cables to this tube and then pull everything through, that way we won't have so much of a battle. I think that's the way to go. So let me grab some tape and then we'll continue. So while I was getting tape, I also went and got some of the tools we'll need. We need a crimper and scissors, cutter, and torch, because yes, new cables mean new connections. We're not using any of the old ones, and we're not gonna do it the old way. We've got some proper eyes for the new cables, so we'll crimp those on. And yes, I do also have some heat shrink to put around the cable. So let's see. So we're going to take both cables and tape them to. We've pulled this plastic tube that's actually the speed cable, the speed pressure sensor from the motor, and we'll actually just tape this against each other and hope that it holds. Put quite a bit of tape on the end so it smooths the. Because you're obviously going from a thin one to two thick cables, so I'd rather give it some more as opposed to pulling it off halfway and you've got to start all over again. So don't do it like me, do it right the first time. I only had the bigger cable available back when we put this motor on. So there we go, and then we're going to start pushing it through. So it's at least started. So let's see if this will pull through easily enough so we can actually do something with it. Let's open this. Let's get you guys positioned a bit better. So Yes, I'm pretty much almost wearing my DDE hoodie at the moment because it's still 3 degrees outside. It's one of the few hoodies that I found that's thick and really keeps you warm. So thanks to DDE for that one. That really helps. Right, let's see about pulling this cable through. We might have to do a push and pull because it's not coming through easily. There we go. That seems to be doing the trick. Do a bit of a push and pull here. There we go. And we're winning. There's the side. So now we take all the tape off before we pull any further, and then that saved us quite a bit of time. So there's not anything else that has to go through that cable, through that tube. The reason why we did this is because the cable before was a 25 min. So right, now we've got a short amount on this side, so we need to pull it back a bit. And so what we're first going to do before we do anything here, we've got a little bit of slack in there, is we're first going to connect it at the motor side, so we know that that's connected before we pull it too far and we don't have anything left. That's the last thing we want, because then we can redo everything all over again. So let's go down and connect it there. As I said before, so we've got our 2 cables here. They're still the same length. So we're just I'm just going to move you guys up a bit. That's a bit better. So now this has a special slot that fits in on the groove here. So as I was saying, this has a special slot with a grooved side, and so this square tube fits perfectly into this groove here, which holds it in place. The cables, the 2 positive and negatives, need to go around the front to the other side of the motor in order to be connected on that side. So we're first going to pull a bit of slack back, see that we have enough, and then we'll see if we can fit that in. Here we go. So this has got to be on this side of the motor. Starter motor sits here on this one. So we got to go around the front. So we're going to see what cables we've got to make some space with in order to not cramp each other up. And we'll see if I think we actually have too much, but I'd rather have a little bit extra than not enough at all. The other thing that we need to fasten back is the accelerator and gear shift, so we need to figure out which ones those are, so we can get everything connected again, and then put all the bolts and nut back to secure everything. So, and I need to figure out which cable is which. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave these 2 here, and then I'm going to go to the console, move the stick. Now your first bit on the stick on an outboard or on any boat, in actual fact, the first bit of movement will be your gear selection, so either forward or backward, and your continued further forward will then give you your acceleration either forward, and then in reverse it will be the same thing. If you pull it backwards, it will, from the neutral, which is usually the upright position, pulling it backwards will be putting it into reverse, and then pulling it further will then give you some acceleration. You'll have more acceleration space going forward than back sometimes. That depends on the handle that you have. and it depends on how it's connected up, because that's for a different video and another day that I'll explain to you, that you can have different adjustments on the handles. For now, we're gonna move over to the console, to the handle, to just move it back and forth, keeping an eye on which one of these two are the ones that are moving, so we can tell which one we need to connect where, so we don't connect the gear shift to the accelerator or the accelerator to the gear shift. We need it the other way around. So if I move my gear shift from this, or my handle from the center position, one click forward like that, just back and forth, that will be putting it into forward gear, and then continuing will be accelerating. So we just want to know which cable is moving while we do this. So here we can see that's our cable. So that will be our gear shift, and the other one will be our accelerator. So seeing that we now know that this is our gear shift and that is our accelerator, yes, it's not the other way around, I did double check what I was doing. So we can now see where we need to connect everything, and I can already see that the bottom pin's fallen out, but that's fine, we'll get to it shortly. So let's see if we can maneuver the stuff into position so it sits a bit better, and then we can try and guide all the cables in, not forgetting a crucial little holder for this motor is one of these, and this holds the two cables as they come out of this black pipe. It holds them together and seats them down so it doesn't go anywhere. Don't forget that. If you forget that, you won't have accelerator, because the cable will pull inside the pipe, and you won't find anything. These cables also have special grooves. As you can see, I think this is actually almost up for replacement, but we can still carry on with that for a bit. But as you can see, there's two grooves here, and that plate that I was telling you about actually slots into that groove in between the two cables. So we'll put one on top and one on the bottom, and then we'll secure it down inside its position inside the motor. This always tends to be a bit of a tricky one, just to get everything to line up and just sit right the way you want it. So hopefully we've got everything the right way around this time. It'll be the first time I make the mistake of putting it upside down. Now we have a cable, one of the negative cable, that's actually giving us a problem. So we're going to have to pull everything out. Just really look at how we're having to position everything, because so sometimes the struggle is real. I've just spent the last 20 minutes trying to get this to sit properly without kinking any of the other cables. So sometimes it's a struggle, and that's what we got to do. nut in, or the bolt in. Secure that down so it's not going to come out, and we don't have to redo this all over again at a later stage. Just remember the other thing as well, hey, is a lot of these blocks are aluminium. That being said, your threads, be careful at how much torque you put onto your threads. Too much and you will rip out threads very easily. I'm guilty of that quite regularly. It happens, and then you sit and have to find a different way of having to repair that. So if you can, try not to do it. So, as I've said before, we have now put in, I've turned the motor ever so slightly just to make access for me a little bit easier on this side, and we're now going to see where we need to route through our positive cables, because there's certain places in these motors where you can actually, where all the cable runs through, and there's specific bridges that go in between two pins, so you can actually run the cable through and put the bridge over the top so it holds the cable so it doesn't flop around as you're operating the motor. Always handy to have. Make sure you connect the positive to the right side, or the correct point on the starter motor. There's two sides, not the motor side, but there's another positive cable that's usually powering the rest of the electronics on board of the motor. So you want the positive on that side, and your negative can go anywhere to a good ground on the actual motor, which usually there's a specific place. So like for ours, there's beneath the starter motor where one of its mounting points are, there's actually a bolt where we can, and I just dropped the nut, there we go, that happens more than you think. So we can actually use that mounting point on the starter motor to the actual block as the negative or black side of our starter motor power, or power for the motor. So we're 3 centimeters too long on the cable, but again, I'd rather have too much than not enough. So let's clean the crimps out, and then we can run the 2 cables in, the other one sitting up here, so we'll crimp the points on and then go at it from there. So you need to cut this back ever so slightly. You need to cut the sheathing off of the cable. Come on, focus. Enough so that you can fit it into the actual eye socket, whatever you want to call it. I forgot the name now. I'll get back onto that later. So we don't need to take a whole bunch off. You want it to sit neatly against the tip of this, so that there's no spacing. Before you put this on, remember to put on your heat shrink, because otherwise you're going to crimp everything. So I've already got a piece of heat shrink ready, so I'm going to cut that first and put it on. The other thing you will need besides the scissor when you're doing this is you'll need either a nice sharp blade, preferably your wife's kitchen knife that she always hides from you, or doesn't hide from you, and you know, the potato peeler or the small knife works beautifully. Preferably the bluntest one. Sharpen it just for this, so by the time that you're done that it's blunt again, and then you can give it a good wash and then put it back, and she won't know the difference. Don't tell her that. There we go. So we're only taking a small bit off now before we've got our heat shrink on. So we'll just check, is that deep enough? I think that would be fine. Could maybe go a little bit more. Let's check the fit of it. Does it slide on nicely, neatly? Let's go all the way. Yes, it does. I'm still going to take a little bit off because I want it to really sit perfectly. I do not want to do this again, and I don't want to have any problems down the line. So I'm literally going to take off another millimeter. can see, just take it off the slightest bit more. It doesn't need to be 100%, but I prefer to be a little bit deeper in. There we go, that's a bit of it. Now I know, because it hasn't gotten completely to the end, it needs a bit of pressure. So I know it's all the way in, and I'm fine with that. A couple of wires sticking out, but we'll crimp that in. So I've got a good crimper. Your local hardware auto parts store should have one. I prefer to start at the very beginning to crimp it in, and then squeeze it in. And there you can see, oh, that it's given it its first crimp. It doesn't look like much, but that is not coming off. So I prefer to give it a second one as well. There we go, 2 crimps. And now all we got to do is take the heat shrink, slide that over till about there, and then you need a lighter. Which is out of gas, and I'll be back shortly. So we're back with a lighter that works this time. That's always the case. When you need something, it doesn't always work. So not too much heat. You don't want to burn the plastic. It's heat shrinks, so all it needs is a bit of heat. And you can actually watch it shrink and sit nicely. It gives a nice air seal onto the cable as well, so that you don't get any corrosion on the actual copper cable, which is nice. There you go. There's a nice tight fit. As you can see, it's conformed to the actual crimp, so we know it's nice and tight. Now we can go install this. Let's first do the negative again, and then we'll connect them. So again, the same thing with the negative. We'll measure more or less where it is. Take your wife's favorite sharp kitchen knife and just give it a cut. Don't cut through the copper cable, and then give it a bit of a bending. You should be able to just pull it off. Okay. And then again, we'll do a test fit just to make sure it's right. See, now I've made the mistake here of cutting it too far, so now we've got too much open. So you can either do one or two things. You can either ignore it and just push the sheathing a bit forward, or you can cut your coppers a bit shorter, but I've gone and just pushed your sheathing. It's cold out here, we're on 3 degrees, so it isn't very malleable, so sometimes you just need to give it a little bit. So I'll pull that off again, and then I'll first make my piece of heat shrink to go over there before we continue. Go. There we go. So heat shrink is on, so we can now give that a crimp. perfect little crimp, ready to be installed. So as I said before, we have a little bit of excess cable. That isn't a problem. We have our negative here. Not much state the obvious, but make sure that your battery obviously isn't connected to the other side of these cables before you disconnect or work with any power. The last thing you want is to short circuit these things or to create a spark somewhere. If you do have fuel, anything that can be a fire hazard, so be careful. Make the right precaution. Take the right precautions. Okay, that's nice and secure. Clip it into one of the bottom cables here, and then the positive one goes onto this side where we have the positive for the rest of the electronics for the motor. So again, we do have too much wire with excess. That's fine. I prefer to have a bit of excess. Rather have a little bit too much than not enough. So I'm gonna write mine behind and in, and we'll get rid of that excess just now. Let's first get everything more or less where we want them and in place. And we'll see what we do. Good. Now remember earlier I was saying that there was clips in your motor, so let's turn you. See if you can. So as I was saying earlier, there's clips in your motor bridges, so this piece of plastic goes over to this pin that's over here. If you can see that pin that's over there, and so if you get all the cables underneath that, you can actually move this across, put it on top of that pin and tighten it down, and it will actually keep all the cables nice and locked in between. And that's exactly what we're going to use it for. So we're just going to put this under there. There we go. Put this over that pin, and then we can tie this down, and it will hold those cables neatly in place. Oh, we'll have to get that. So again, tie that down. Just check that there's not too much tension on any of the cables. It's still quite loose, that's fine. So that when we screw it down, it isn't pulling on anything. There we go. Right, so that's tied in. Cables are neatly out of the way. I'm happy with that. That's all connected. So now the first thing I'm going to do now is return my wife's kitchen knife before I get into trouble. Right, so we also had a mic problem in between, so we've charged that up and So that's all in place. Let's put the cover back on, and then we can continue pulling the cables through to the console so we can see what we're going to put where. There we go, locked in place. So that's ready to go. So you can see where the old boxes were and cables. So we're going to have to undo all of this and then retrace everything and make sure that everything's connected correctly and remove the old stuff first before we continue with the new. So let's grab a 10 and just undo all of this, and then we can here we have our relay. These are one of the best relays that I know of. What this allows you to do is you can connect two batteries, so you battery 1, battery 2, or battery 1, battery 2. You connect them together, and once this is charging from the motor side, it will then automatically switch the power to then charge your auxiliary battery. What that allows you to do is that if you leave your boat on and the motor's off, so you're listening to your radio and that's all on auxiliary, you're then able to, even if you use the radio and all the power, well, all the like fridges and things on board, and you do kill the auxiliary battery, you're still able to start the motor so it can start up again. That breaks the connection, so you don't completely drain your starter battery. So the Victron Citrix CT, brilliant little thing. Nice. This up, I think we've now reached the point where we need to get rid of these battery boxes. So I'm going to do that now, and that's out of the way. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to remove this pipe. It was a breather for the tank, but we don't really need it because we're not using a fuel pipe. We actually fill it through the cap that's right here. It's just off camera. So we're going to remove that because at this stage we are doing a bit of playing around and towing with the boat, and the water tends to slush over the back and get into this pipe, and I'm scared that that actually will eventually push water into the tank instead of keeping air out. So I don't need it. Particularly, it doesn't serve me any purpose because when refueling we do it with everything open and vented anyway, so it doesn't really need to be a vented tank when refueling. So I'd rather remove it and prevent water from getting off. We will cap this end off so we don't have any issues with it, but for now it's coming off. As you don't know if you can hear that, but I sure can. So this pipe was in there. Look what is in here. It's water. So that brings us to another thing, is we'll now have to drain the tank and check the tank that there's no water in the fuel and clean all that. There we go. So we've now got the fuel line off that goes to the motor. So just to get the fuel sender unit loose, and then we can completely remove this tank to give it a good clean, make sure that there's no water in it, and get it out of the way so we can actually clean everything properly. So tank is loose. Let's grab the tank out. There's still quite a bit of fuel in this tank. Oh wow. We're gonna have to clean this in place. The tank's 3/4 full. I did not expect that. So we're going to have to clean it with the tank in place. But it's great now because I can also see that I can get to the bilge pump, which is lying skew. So we can clean all that out and get to the rest of the water in the bottom of the boat. So I think this all needs a very good spray down. Let's first find something to cap off the inlets for the tank, and then we'll get out the pressure washer and give this all a very good spray down. Where you come across things that you haven't seen for a while, like a spray bottle. So after a bit of spraying, we ended up using a mold repellent or grime cleaner mold and grime cleaner, which we bought. I did not think this would work, to be very honest. It's worked so well, it bleached everything. So I've also destroyed my hoodie, but time for a new one. But look at the result. Have a look at that. I'm going to turn. How's that for a result? Clean, clean, clean. That's much better. I'm very happy with that. Time to clean the rest up and let the boat dry overnight, and then tomorrow we will redo the wiring and pick it up from there. When you do take this on, learn from my mistakes. Don't wear a nice hoodie. It's unfortunate, but so you learn. I did not think this would work this well, and yeah, it's unfortunate, but we'll order a new one. Eventually, we'll get there. I have a special one on the way, but that one I don't think I'm even going to be able to wear, especially not doing this. Then I at least have one to work with, and I'll order another one to use for every day or for different things. So anyway, if you want a DDE hoodie, you can go to DDE Merch Garage or to the YouTube channel, and they've got the DDE Merch shop where they do limited drops of the current ones that they're doing. Really good. It's really good quality. They're thick and durable, besides the bleach, but they work like a charm. Really love these hoodies. So yeah, let's continue with the cleaning and yeah, forward. So we want to move the batteries into the console. We have two sliding doors here that we're going to have to remove and get everything that's in here out, so we can fit the batteries in properly, do the wiring, and then we can rearrange the current. Then we can rearrange what we want to put in there and clean everything out. I'd stored the old batteries just here as we cleaned everything out, but now that we're getting into the extra gauge, now that we're getting into where we want to put them, we're going to have to do that a little bit differently. So, batteries come out. Right, what else is in here? Jerry can, 20 litre fuel, pump for inflatable parts, remember that screwdriver you once were looking for that you lost so many moons ago? Now I know where it is. Our jockey wheel can also get thrown away. So now we pretty much have an empty console. Besides the 2 speakers that are still in here, I don't even know if they work. The boxes have definitely seen better days. So I think what we're going to do is get rid of these as well, because we'll keep the speakers. Oh right, I'd gotten this from a client, and that client had used wine boxes from South Africa to make sub boxes. Gotta hand it to them sometimes. That's thinking outside of the box. So we're gonna get rid of these. Look at the mold. That's not good. That also means that we need to relook at sealing all the panels up top, because there is some shape or form of water still coming into the boat, and that needs to be addressed. So here we go. Might as well, while we're at it, give the inside of the console a spray. Get all the dust and all the muck out, and then we can take it from there. You know, this stuff seemed to have worked so well, seeing that we had mold on the back of the speakers. I'm not taking any chances, seeing that we already here. Might as well just spray the entire inside of the console where we can reach, because I'm already seeing dark spots, and might as well grab hold of it now before this gets out of hand like we had in the back. We'll give that a couple of hours to sink in, and then rinse it off again. Again, make sure that this doesn't touch any clothing or anything else. Proof may be it bleaches everything. So that lessons learned. So we'll give that a good part of an hour to pull in, and then we'll give it a clean. In the meantime, I think I'm going to do the same to the back here, to the top of this thing, of the deck, and give that a good rinse off as well. So I think that's all we have time for today. Unfortunately, due to the temperature being 3 degrees, things aren't going to dry very fast, but we have to do it this way. Otherwise, we're going to redo everything within a couple of months. So I'd rather do it right the first time around, or the second time around, as opposed to having to rip all this out into the season again to then redo it. And I want to do things right. I don't want to have breakdowns. I want to be able to go out into the water and help others, and help people, as opposed to being the problem myself. So that's what we're going for this year, to see if we can go around and help more people and meet the rest of you, those who are in the areas. That'd be really cool to have people come on board and help us as well. We have done that in the past. We've taken people with us to go do rescues, and it sounds severe. It isn't. It's just people that are of elderly age, or older than 65, for example, and don't have or have a disability and still enjoy their own boat, and they run into issues, whether it's a fueling problem or whatever the case may be. And I just feel that that's why we can help. If you can help. So thank you guys very much for watching. Please subscribe. It really helps us out. We really want to build this channel. And leave your comments down below. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Yeah, see you guys on the next one. Cheers. Bye for now.